back comfortably. I'm going to sit and adjust the mic.
Okay.
We are
Testing.
You're too far.
It's right here. It's right by my mouth.
Right. But that's what I got. Yeah, I just need you to talk like constantly so I can see where you're.
Just talk on.
Okay, so yesterday I was thinking about going to the beach. I really wanted to go, but it was cold. And I had school and work. And so, yeah. Hmm. I made that story up. I mean,
Yeah, just keep talking.
okay. Um, now I'm listening to you. Okay. I don't know. He likes to sleep in. So, oh, it's been live for a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Keep it private. So like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Ride Tower of Terror. It's funny. Do you still need me to talk? Oh, okay. So this is a lot of pressure.
We're all just
Yeah.
we expect you to have one.
So okay.
Oh, are you going to read the questions?
I can, if you don't mind.
I think that would be
You
great.
need to restart. You
Restart. We hadn't started.
Okay.
will.
So this is a live Q&A. Just is what it is.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So
But
can I
you're
start?
not muted for sure now, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I'm
If
gonna
I
start off
am,
easy.
this is it. We're winging it. Here it goes like this.
Okay, I'm gonna start off really easy.
Okay.
Does Florida allow permanent alimony?
No. It's done.
That's correct.
Good
That's
job.
correct. Yeah, Florida no longer allows permanent alimony. That just got changed. It got removed.
Yep, recently, and you will get tested on that.
On
Yeah.
one of my Facebook groups, there was a colleague who I really like, and she's very funny, but she's from like South Florida, and we kind of cross paths at some of like the bigger events. Anyway, she goes, as an added affront to Florida's alimony, and all the legislators are trying to reduce or eliminate it. Like, she's so insulted. She went on
Mad.
like this diatribe about how like supporting your significant other. I can't believe it. I was like, oh my God. Anyway, I thought that was pretty funny.
That is funny.
Okay, what's next?
Okay. Ooh, this one might be I feel like this one's not too bad. How
Okay.
is child support calculated in Florida?
That's the child support guidelines worksheet.
That's right.
That's right.
I thought there was a harder answer than that.
It's based off of the incomes of the parties, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
And it's intended, obviously, to make sure that both parents have a similar ability to support the child.
Mhm.
That's kind of that, right?
Yeah.
It first goes to making sure that your child has somewhere to live. So if the amount of child
100%.
support that you pay is less than the other parent's rent, then you are paying the right amount.
Also, off of child support, can a parent waive child support in Florida?
No, you cannot waive child support.
Yeah. So right
Correct.
now, what we're doing on our Q&A for all of you that have joined us, we've had a few new friends join us, is our new law clerk, Vanita. We are quizzing her on family law stuff. I want you to throw her some hard curveballs. Throw her some like good Q&As that are more complex.
Okay.
This is an educational thing for everybody
Can a
here.
third party pick up a child for visitation?
Yes, but it has to be like stipulated to.
Yeah.
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 Actually, we built it into our
Yeah, we-
parenting plans
Yeah.
that a designated third party can visit. Actually, I have a question right here on the live. How do I go 50-50 without paying child support? I used to years ago. So actually, Elugaro, I don't know if I said that right. Anyway, the way that you have no child support is if the two of you have equal incomes and that the two of you have 50-50 time sharing. In general, Carlos, in general, if you do not have equal incomes and equal time sharing, there still will be child support. Child support is still calculated in a 50-50 scenario. So if you make more money than the other parent, or they pay more of the designated expenses, which is health insurance or childcare, that's going to be adjusted in the child support guidelines. But something that might happen is if the child no longer has daycare, but you're still paying the same amount of child support, even if your incomes didn't change, you need some kind of a modification to your child support. So that's a caveat. It sounds to me like your child support needs to be recalculated if both of you are making more or different money than when it was originally calculated. Got a good one?
Yeah.
That was good.
Okay. I'm trying to think of hard ones, but I mean, I feel like for me, I can't really figure out what's hard and what's not. It's based off of me. But I will say, okay, let's go back to a basic divorce, right? How is equitable distribution kind of figured out? Like, what do you kind of like? What kind of assets are there? Is there like, how do you determine what's marital and non-marital? That's probably better.
Oh, so I mean, that's
We got you, Carlos. Make an appointment. Seriously,
Carlos.
it's a 407-900-7451. Joy, who is just absolutely
A
lives up
joy.
to
We
her
love
name.
Joy.
She is a joy. She will answer the phone and she will definitely help you out. She's so kind. We'll get you in. We're going to try to get you in as soon as we can. We'll help you out. At least take a look at the numbers, and we could probably advise you of that inside the consultation, right? So the day you have the consultation, we could get you some decent answers if you know your numbers. Okay.
So equitable distribution.
Yes.
It's basically marital assets and non-marital assets. All the marital assets are just basically anything that was acquired during the marriage.
Very
Right?
good. And
Yeah.
is there
And
any
then-
exceptions to that when you're married that could be non-marital, meaning like any assets that you received during the marriage that could be excluded and be considered non-marital?
I think it's very specific, like gifts that were given to you, like non-interspousal gifts is what they call it. Like maybe like something that was given to you in a will.
Yes, like inheritances,
Yes.
bequests, things like that. But the key to this is that you have to keep it non-commingled, meaning
Yes.
you can't commingle it with funds. So, for example, if you have a trust account, right? If you have a trust account that was separate, that's considered non-marital. But if you take marital assets or say like a marital home and put that in that trust, it's instantly commingled and it could be kind of a claim for that. So that's a caveat for that. So I love that.
Equitable distribution is funny because you have to like
It is
on a
funny.
case by case basis.
It's very
really
much
so
a case by
different.
case
Yeah.
basis. I think all family law is a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Everything. That's the best
Everything.
part. I have a hard time believing, and some people try to say it, but I have a very hard time believing that AI is going to take over family law.
Oh, yeah.
You might be able to get the forms, and the forms are free online. But really, that doesn't mean that everything that you're trying to make sure you argue for or all of your rights can be satisfied by those forms.
Yeah.
That's the big problem that I see. And the cleanup of making mistakes with those forms is so expensive. That's the big issue there that I've seen.
It's because it's also different. It's not a standard thing. Like it's just not.
Right.
Yeah.
So those forms are really for if you have nothing and want nothing, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay, I got one.
Okay.
Oh,
I got another question here. All right. If one parent refuses to adhere to a medical treatment plan recommended by a specialist for their child, how can the other parent ensure that treatment is followed?
yeah.
Just think of earlier this week.
Yeah, we had this issue this week.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the parent has to adhere to is it in like an order, a court order?
They have shared parental responsibility as to decision making.
Mm.
How do you break a tiebreaker is really what the question is.
What
do you do? If a client came to you and was like, I can't get this done. My child has a broken leg and needs surgery, and dad thinks it should just heal by using popsicle splints.
Yeah. Wouldn't you have to Well, first of all, you'd have to go in front of the judge, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'd have to see what the judge says and go by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually not that the judge makes the decisions because the
Mhm.
parents make the decisions for the children. So the technicality on this is you would be requesting that the judge make you, the parent requesting it, have the ability to have a ultimate decision making authority over really this one
This
decision,
issue.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And if it's broken down, right, the parent is making continued bad decisions over and over, then you can ask the court to modify to get sole or ultimate decision making authority.
From there on. Yeah.
So that's how you start building the case, right? That's
Mhm.
how you get, in other states, it would be like sole legal custody.
Mhm.
That's the same thing. We just call it parental responsibility because we don't use the phrase custody.
Custody.
Phrase time sharing and shared parental
Time sharing,
responsibility.
Yeah, rather than
Yes.
like custody and
Yeah.
Massachusetts uses like parenting time.
Parenting time.
All right, you got one.
Yes. What? I don't know if this. Well, for me, I hope this is okay.
It's fine.
What does UCCJEA stand for?
Oh, the Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Enforcement Agreement.
Act.
Act.
There
Thank
you
you,
go.
bro.
Tongue
Yeah,
twister.
yeah.
Do you know what like it details? Like what's like the main kind of thing about like how do you establish jurisdiction for a child? here in
Basically, it
Florida?
says that the jurisdiction for the child, they're going to follow whatever it is in any state. They're going to follow that where it was originally filed. Is that?
So yeah, there's like two caveats to this. So it's either going to be 6 months, right? You're going to look at from the data filing, where has the child been for the past 6 months, right? There's different analysis to this depending on the facts. So it's 6 months prior to filing. You're going to ask where was the child, and then you're going to ask, has there been a court order? Is there already a case established?
Mhm.
If there's already a case established, you're typically going to go wherever that state was where the court order is established, unless they relinquished jurisdiction. And you would have an order or some sort of like relinquishment. Excuse me,
yeah.
sorry, my speech. On that. But if you don't have a court order, you're going to look to where has the child been for the past 6 months, and you kind of go from there. And jurisdiction can be very tricky.
Yeah.
So that's also super fact specific. You can do a nice little like chart I have that I follow, like a yes and no.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
good?
that's great.
Great.
I don't use a chart, but I know it off the top of my head. I
Yeah,
can,
she does.
I
know
can like
my
hear the
chart-
facts and I'm like, yes,
Studying
no.
for my
I use
family
my
law,
chart
like
off of Aaron.
jurisdiction was the one thing that tripped me up because it was like
6
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, I
6
know
months.
6 months, but then it was like something about like if the parent lives somewhere else for 6 months, like it was like, I get why it could be a little bit tricky.
You just always start with two questions. Where was the child? And is there a court order? I think that's always the
Yeah.
best way to start.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I made my chart off of my learning from Aaron.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So UCCJEA Jurisdiction Enforcement Act is, yes, thank you, is adopted in 49 of the 50 states. So they all agree that this is the rule. Massachusetts
I knew
has,
it was an M state.
has the predecessor, right?
Yep.
So Massachusetts has what was before it, but it's still basically and approximately the same thing. Of course, I don't practice there, so I don't care to go into those details. If there's
Mhm.
a Massachusetts attorney who practices there and you want to speak up, that's you. That's for the comments. I got you. But it's basically all of the states agree, which is why you can get a like a judicial conference basically when there's a question as to where jurisdiction should be. So sometimes you get the judicial conference because maybe they've been in Florida for 3 years, but there's a prior court order. The way you try to bring it to Florida is you ask Georgia, I don't know, that's just the one right above us, Georgia, to relinquish jurisdiction and let us proceed here because nobody's there.
Mm.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
there's a little bit, there's some gamesmanships, but it was designed to eliminate the gamesmanship of where custody is.
Yeah.
Because they were doing that in the 70s. I don't know if you've heard the history of this, but in the 70s, parents were like grabbing their kids and going to a different state where it was more favorable. And it was like a rush to the courthouse. I know you learned about that
Mhm.
in civil procedure, but they would do it with their kids.
Mhm.
So it was like whoever filed first got jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Right. So they tried to eliminate that by having this 6 month wherever they've lived. You got to kind of accept it there because people were kidnapping kids across the country
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then filing. So
Speaking of
Anyway, don't do that shit.
relocating a child, if a client came to you, right, and they were like, hey, I have a current parenting plan, but I just got a job in Georgia and they need to relocate, like, what would you advise them on the next steps that they would have to take?
Can they
in
go?
order to, yeah, can they go?
You have to petition to relocate.
Yes.
Amazing.
What's the
Yeah.
distance?
60 miles or 50,
50.
miles?
50
50 miles.
Yeah, 50
As
miles.
the crow flies, which is very different than driving.
Very different.
Just think of it as like a kind of like the straight line if a crow is just
Mhm.
All right, the way I
So-
love to explain it, because I
Yeah.
think everybody can imagine this, it's if two helicopters had a
that's a great
really
one.
long piece of yarn, a 50-mile piece of yarn, and one helicopter was hovering over where you live, the other helicopter can make a complete circle around, and you can live anywhere that that helicopter would hover.
Yeah, that's a
That's
good way to
it.
think
Yeah.
of it.
It's so stupid, but
Yeah.
as soon as I explain it that way, everybody gets it.
I'm
Nobody's like,
picturing it.
I still don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, with a yarn, like two helicopters. There's two dudes in a helicopter's like, breaker. You know, like, no way.
Well, also going off of that, say the parent already moved and they're coming to you. And they're like, hey, I kind of already moved and I didn't get a court order saying I can they still stay there in that other state? Like, will there still be some sort of remedy, or will they still be able to see their child, even though they moved when they probably shouldn't have?
Are they going to just lose their kid?
Yeah, they
No,
lose
they're
their-
not.
From a
of course
basic
not.
point of justice, is that going to happen?
I think that
No.
it's like unfortunate for the other parent, but I think that until there's a court ruling on it, they can kind of continue doing what they're doing.
There's nothing they can do about it, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, what happens is the court just goes, well, now we have to figure this out. And are you in trouble? And do we have to bring the child back? If you represent the parent who says, hey, they moved out of state, you need to file an immediate, return the child.
Yeah.
But if they've been living there for 4 years and violated this, you're going to seem like a jackass.
Right. You can't do
Mhm.
any emergency.
It's not an emergency, right? At that point, emergency is the immediate loss of life or limb or removal from the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Immediate, right? It's immediate. So you kind of, oftentimes we have to get creative with our solutions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's all fact dependent.
100%. Also, the reason why you can move is because you have a right to travel. That's a constitutional right, right? And they're
Mhm.
not going to take that away from you. You have a right to travel, and you also have a right to see your children,
Yeah.
especially here in Florida. I think that's something that I really appreciate about Florida. It's the presumption it starts at 50-50, right? So I think that some states favor women, some states favor other men, but I feel like Florida is really good at 50-50, and they
50-50.
want you to be able to see your kids and still have that constitutional right to parent your children.
Mhm.
So I think that that's something that I appreciate about Florida.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they're of course, you're just gonna have to establish a long distance parenting plan, and like it's fact specific. Obviously, there's gonna be more involved in things you might have to do. But just because you relocated against a court order or didn't get approval, it doesn't mean you're gonna lose that parenting plan or lose some parenting with your child.
Right.
Yeah.
The funny thing is Florida didn't always have this relocation statute. There was kind of no real rule on it for a long time. I was not practicing at that time, but it's
Yeah.
not that old.
Yeah.
Right. So I think often about what the fuck did people do?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. How do you stop that?
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of clients come to me and they go, okay, well, now that we have a parenting plan, can I move to Missouri? I'm
Oh.
like,
This does happen.
well, they think now that I'm like, well,
Yeah.
how could you? Well, first of all, how could you follow this parenting plan if you
Yeah.
guys have equal
Yeah.
time sharing, which is
How would
Florida's
you do that?
presumption?
Mhm.
Help me out.
Yeah.
So, that makes it hard. But then there are people who are like, well, it's fundamentally unfair that I can't move to go be near my family.
Mhm.
I was like, that's unfair to you, not to the child.
Yeah.
You then take the child away from the other parent.
Mhm.
It's also a lot, I don't want to use the word easier. I feel like courts are a little more receptive when the child's staying here with the parent in Florida and just the one party's moving. And then they're going to
Right.
be like the break parent is what kind of Attorney Morris calls it, where it's like, spring break, summer break, because obviously if you're in another state, it's kind of hard to go back and forth that
Yeah.
often. So that always
Yeah.
makes it a little bit more receptive to judges. Like, okay, like compared to like if you're trying to completely remove the child from the state from the
Yeah.
other parent.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right?
And Attorney Morris always has the best solution. She always comes
Yes.
up with something. Not
Yes.
toot her own horn.
Jesus, I'm right here. You can stay working. Yeah. You can stay here. Okay, so I have a question that came up here. Is it okay for me to know my child's whereabouts while the mother is at work, right? So if like one parent isn't with the child and it's their time sharing, does the parent who does not have the time sharing have a right to know where the child is? Like it's dad's day and dad's at work.
Mm-hmm.
Child isn't in school.
Okay. This is me just guessing here because I
Yeah.
feel
This one there isn't a hard and fast
Yeah,
on
there-
it.
I feel like if it's a set schedule, like that would be something that would be outlined in like an agreement.
It's dad's day. Dad has Fridays.
Then I
Mom is
don't
at
really-
work.
then I
Dad's at
don't-
work.
I don't really think so because I feel like if it's his day and he has the responsibility of finding a caregiver, and that's just, I think people need to trust that he's making a good decision for his child. So
I would say that's right.
Yeah, I would
You
say
know?
that's right as well.
Yeah.
I think this is something that people have a hard time really understanding.
Or have a hard time realizing that maybe like Friday night from 5 to 9, if the child goes and spends time with like grandma and all the cousins, you don't have to call and update mom.
right, this
Right,
is
not-
fully your time.
Right. But would your answer change if dad was on, and it's during his time, right? So he's entitled to this time and it's summer. Dad was on a 2-week vacation and he was out of the state.
And it was during dad's time.
During dad's time.
Yeah, I feel like he would need to notify the mom and just of who's watching the child.
Well, really where you're going to be is
Yeah.
the notification, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be in Canada,
Oh, you mean taking the child with him? Yeah, then yeah.
yeah.
I would think
Yeah.
she needs to know where the child is
It's
traveling
reasonable.
to.
Yeah, if there's some emergency or, child goes missing or, I watch a little too much true crime. So
Yeah,
Same.
yeah, same, same.
I think about this stuff all the
Yeah,
time.
true crime podcasts in the morning.
Yes. So yeah, that was
I think we see a lot of times one parent was like, well, why can't I know what's happening all hours of the day when they're on dad's day or they're on mom's day? And I think that's something that people have a hard time realizing, but that's their time. And you just got to kind of, like you said, like trust what they're doing and
Yeah.
everything like that. But obviously when it comes to like trips, crossing state lines, things like that, like, of course, it's reasonable to know where they're at
Mm-hmm.
and things like that.
yeah. So let me see. I have a
Ooh.
few. Yeah, go ahead.
What factors or what is it called that the judge uses to establish a parenting plan? Like, what do they think about? Like, when they're
Actually,
ruling
just
on-
come up with one.
Yeah, just one.
There's like
the
there's-
parenting plan.
A
There's
through
oh yeah,
P.
there's like so many.
just come up with one.
Do you know what the name of the statute is? Like, what they kind of call it? Right. What are the factors called? Let's start there. Do you know what they're called?
I don't think I would know.
I
how to
don't know
answer
what they're
this.
called.
I know the number. I would just say the number.
Oh no, I was just called just best interest of the minor child factors.
Oh yeah,
That's
well,
what I
yeah,
always
okay.
hear people everything say.
Yeah. So one of them would be just how close they are to friends and family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
The first one, the top one, is facilitating a close and continuing relationship
Relationship.
with the other parent.
Yes.
So it's your job to make sure that you are being a good parent and making sure your children have a good relationship with the other parent. Our courts really like that. So sometimes when people go to court and they just want to bash their ex, that actually has like a lot of very negative blowback on them.
Yeah.
So if you go to court and you're like, he's a jerk and he never changed his diaper, he doesn't even know where we store the peanut butter to make sandwiches, right?
Mhm.
That storyline is a failure every time, right? It's not enough. It's not enough to get us over that hump, because in order to deviate from shared parental responsibility, there needs to be detriment.
Yeah.
So like a straight harm.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that, then you're really not going to be able to deviate,
Mhm.
you know?
One that I see, there's one of the factors that I feel like I mostly don't see get applied. I think it's because I've mostly worked with younger children, is the child's preference. That is one of them.
Yeah,
And I feel like
yeah.
that's very rarely used,
Yeah.
at least in my personal experience. Do you
Yeah.
find that that's been used a lot?
You actually do use it a lot if you can. You just don't know it. With a guardian ad litem.
True. Oh, you're right.
right? That they
Yeah,
are
they
there.
represent the child.
They represent the child, and they
Mhm.
actually represent the best interests of the child.
Yeah.
So it's different
That's
than
true.
an attorney ad litem, which represents the child that like the
For
child
legal
wants.
issues.
Right. So the child wants to do right. So there might be an attorney ad litem, say if a child is filing a lawsuit because they're like a child star and they have some money and it's their money to
What
be
about
addressing,
emancipation?
they would be a legal adult.
Yeah, but
So-
I guess would they need their own attorney to do that? I think I've never.
Yeah,
Seen that.
they would. They would.
Mhm.
But an attorney ad litem is like the children have interests that are adverse to the parents.
Yeah.
But a guardian ad litem is for their best interests, even if the child's like, I want to go with dad, but dad's, a drug addict under a bridge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you still have to assert their best interests, right? It's still
Yeah.
not what's best for him. But that's what the guardian ad litem, that's how
You're
you
right,
get that
you're
into
so true.
evidence.
Yeah.
And you do a ton of that.
I do
Mhm.
a ton of that.
You
Yeah.
feel like you do
Yeah.
a ton of it. We have a lot of cases with that.
So many.
Yeah. So you didn't even know.
And I love guardian ad litem's reports. I just said that to you yesterday.
Yeah.
I did. I just said that yesterday.
It really is how we get over the hump
It is.
Yeah.
And honestly,
in a lot of cases.
it brings such a good insight when there's some issues with children and things like that.
Well, because we don't know what's going on with the other parent. We only know our client's side.
Yeah.
100%. Because, we're obviously going to advocate for our client.
Always.
The other attorney is always going to advocate for their client. So, like, you're going to have the different perspectives where they kind of come in as that third party, kind of neutral and detached, not to use the judge's kind of word, to come in and just see what's the best interest. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And how do we make sure? Because it's our job to present all of this to the
Mhm.
judge, right? So if our client's just like, my ex is a jerk and he's mean and I hate him. She's a bad mom because she never cared. She doesn't go to the doctor's appointments. I do all of the teacher meetings. I swear to God.
I'm hearing a case right now. That you're doing that. I know exactly what we're talking about.
It just, how is the judge going to be like, well, is not going to a teacher meeting make you a bad parent?
Right.
Yeah.
Not maybe that won't get us there. But if there's more and there's more to be investigated, I can't do it. I'm not going to, hey, I'm your husband's lawyer.
Mhm.
I'm here to just check it out.
Yeah.
What kind of sheets you got on the bed?
For real.
Yeah.
gosh,
So I had a
yeah.
case one time where mom did not have sheets on the bed for the child, just a blanket. I was like, what kind of raggedy ass shit
Yeah.
is that? It was gross.
Yeah. It is.
Gross. I was like,
It
this
is
is gross. She
Mhm.
wasn't otherwise gross, but
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was his lawyer, so I was like, they don't have sheets.
You can get sheets at the dollar store.
They don't have sheets.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's
Go-
like,
yeah, go to Dollar General. You could get very inexpensive sheets. Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Anyway, let me see. I got a couple more here that came through. Do my ex's mother-in-law wants to make sure that she gets time with the children. Can she do that?
ex's mother-in-law.
Right.
Okay.
Really wants to
So,
like be in on
so
it and
the
have their
mother-
own
mother-in-law?
time. Yeah, my ex's mother. Sorry, my
Okay,
mother-in-law.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes they come through a little.
Yeah. So grandma, yeah, grandparents have some rights. But that's in very rare cases where
No.
No rights.
No rights.
No rights.
okay, but there is one though that that
his parents died.
There's
Parents
also
died.
there's
So we
also-
are representing some grandparents in a case, but it's like grandparent against grandparent.
right. So
The
they have
parents
rights
died.
in that sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
I
don't
guess
have rights. We have to
They
assert
have
them.
no-
They'd have nothing.
Yeah.
Now they are a family to the child, so they have like a superior like ability to have the child. They're kin to the child, but they don't have these like automatic rights. Like
Yeah.
we got to figure this out for them. We are doing some creative jumping jacks on that. That's not standard at all.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Well, you also have to have standing too. Grandparents have a certain level of
Well, the
standing.
fact that
in
I
Florida.
said that they do, that means that I have a little bit of a good argument here.
for
Yeah,
sure in
for
that
sure.
case, but they
Yeah,
don't
in that
have rights
case.
superior or on par with any parent
Yeah.
who's living,
Yeah.
unless those parental rights are terminated.
Yep. So like if they're kind of calling because they know that their grandkids may be being abused or neglected or abandoned in some way, and they're trying to maybe adopt them or kind of come in and kind of take control, there is a certain level, and there's case law on this as well, that if the child would have to be living with the grandparents for a consecutive amount of 6 months consecutively in the past 24 months. So if that's not there, it could be argued that they don't have standing or any like
Right.
was it like play in the game or whatever
Yeah,
to kind of even
yeah.
come in.
Yeah. So actually I have a comment on the live stream from Jackson. Actually, we did answer something like this earlier in the live stream, but I'm going to answer it again because I want to make sure you hear it, Jackson. If parents have joint decision making rights and disagree on an educational or health issue, what are some common tiebreakers other than going through mediation? Actually, really going through mediation is an avenue to find an agreement because the two of you are to agree on this. The tiebreaker, unless it's outlined in your parenting plan, which most parenting plans don't have it because it's not common in Florida, but your tiebreaker will be presenting it to court. And if it's some sort of educational decision or health, you really need to bring an expert. And that expert might be your child's pediatrician, or it might be the school if the child, for example, needs an IEP and the other parent isn't agreeing to it, right? So a lot of these things are going to require some creative lawyering because there's no cut and dry rule. There's no law on should a child get an IEP. There's no cut and dry rule or law on should you allow your child to be on ADHD medication rather than trying some other therapeutic source, right? Will you look like a bit of a knucklehead if you refuse like cancer treatment? Yeah, you will. But if the decision is should we do chemo or remove the leg, I understand this is dark. I just have to deal with these issues all day. So they're not dark for me because I feel like I'm helping families. So you'll have to forgive me on that. But if it's how do we make that decision? Sometimes it is through bringing it through to a judge and asking them to help you to give the parent seeking the action what's called ultimate decision making over that one action, right? So it can get hairy if the two of you have such a high conflict. Some other ways that you can resolve that kind of a conflict is getting a parenting coordinator involved in your situation. If you and your ex have a lot of conflicts on it, you get a parenting coordinator involved and you have them assist you, right? It's an alternative dispute resolution, kind of like mediation, but it helps you keep lawyers out of your life without having to go to court because we're not always the best problem solvers and we come often with a hefty price tag. We're worth it, but not cheap.
True.
Any final words?
No, yeah, I thought you did
Thank
great.
you for having
You
me.
did fantastic.
Yeah.
My debut.
Your
Yeah.
debut.
Yeah.
Part
it
of
was
the
great.
team.
It was great.
All right. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.